Have you ever wondered why someone can seem completely captivated by you one moment, then disappear without explanation the next? This puzzling behavior reveals the hidden fear that keeps avoidants running from love, a pattern so deeply ingrained that even they don't fully understand why they do it. The truth about avoidant attachment goes far deeper than simple commitment phobia or fear of intimacy. These individuals are trapped in a psychological prison built from childhood experiences, defended by walls so high that love itself becomes the enemy. Understanding this hidden fear changes everything about how relationships unfold. When someone with avoidant attachment pulls away just as things get serious, when they create distance right after moments of closeness, or when they seem allergic to emotional vulnerability, there's a specific reason driving this behavior. The fear isn't really about the other person at all. It's about a fundamental belief that depending on others leads to disappointment, abandonment, and pain. This belief runs so deep that their nervous system treats emotional intimacy like a threat to survival. Think about characters like Joe Goldberg from the Netflix series You. While extreme in his methods, Joe demonstrates classic avoidant patterns underneath his obsessive behavior. He craves connection desperately but simultaneously fears it, creating elaborate fantasies about relationships while struggling with actual intimacy. Or consider Chuck Bass from Gossip Girl, who repeatedly sabotages his relationship with Blair whenever vulnerability becomes too intense. These fictional examples mirror real-life patterns where avoidants unconsciously choose distance over the risk of emotional pain. The cognitive biases that fuel this behavior create a self-fulfilling prophecy. Confirmation bias leads avoidants to notice every sign that relationships are dangerous while ignoring evidence of safety and love. The negativity bias makes them focus intensely on potential threats to their independence, magnifying small relationship conflicts into relationship-ending catastrophes. Meanwhile, the availability heuristic causes them to make decisions based on their most memorable experiences of disappointment rather than the full spectrum of relationship possibilities. But here's what makes this particularly tragic. The very behavior designed to protect them from hurt ends up creating the abandonment they fear most. When they withdraw, become distant, or create conflicts to push partners away, they often succeed in driving away people who genuinely cared about them. Then their internal voice says, "See? Everyone leaves eventually. It's better to be alone." This reinforces the original wound and makes future relationships even more threatening. The path forward requires understanding that this isn't about logic or willpower. Avoidant attachment develops as a brilliant survival strategy during childhood, usually in response to caregivers who were emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, or overwhelming. The child learns that emotional needs lead to rejection or disappointment, so they adapt by becoming self-reliant and suspicious of emotional connection. This adaptation works perfectly for a child in that environment, but becomes a prison in adult relationships. If you want to better understand someone's attachment style, see the link in the description to one of the most popular books on attachment theory. Now imagine a woman named Sarah who had learned early in life that needing others was dangerous. Her parents divorced when she was 7, and both became so consumed with their own pain that emotional support simply wasn't available. Sarah adapted by becoming incredibly independent, excelling in school, building a successful career, and creating a life that looked perfect from the outside. She dated, even had longer relationships, but something always went wrong right when things got serious. The pattern was always the same, though she didn't recognize it at first. A relationship would start with intense chemistry and excitement. The other person would be drawn to her confidence and independence. Everything felt manageable when emotions stayed at a surface level. But then something would shift. Maybe her partner would want to spend more time together, or suggest moving in, or simply express deeper feelings. Suddenly, Sarah would feel trapped, suffocated, like the walls were closing in. But here's where the story gets more complex, because the fear wasn't really about commitment or the other person's behavior. The fear was about what Sarah had learned to associate with emotional dependency. In her mind, needing someone meant inevitable disappointment. Caring deeply meant eventual abandonment. Letting someone matter meant giving them the power to destroy her emotional stability. So her nervous system would kick into high alert, flooding her with anxiety and the overwhelming urge to create distance. Sarah's last relationship had been with someone named David, who was patient, kind, and genuinely interested in building something real together. For 6 months, things felt different. Sarah found herself relaxing in ways she hadn't experienced before. She started sharing more personal stories, spending nights at his apartment, even talking about future plans. It felt terrifying and wonderful at the same time. But then David mentioned wanting her to meet his family during the holidays. The suggestion hit Sarah like a physical blow, though she couldn't explain why. Meeting his family meant the relationship was serious. It meant expectations, obligations, the possibility that his family might not like her, or worse, that they might, which would create even more pressure to make things work. That night, Sarah lay awake analyzing every aspect of their relationship, suddenly noticing things that bothered her about David that she'd never focused on before. The way he chewed his food, his laugh that sometimes seemed too loud, how he always wanted to plan weekend activities instead of being spontaneous. Within 2 weeks, Sarah had convinced herself that David wasn't right for her. She started becoming less available, responding to his texts with shorter messages, finding excuses to avoid spending time together. When David asked what was wrong, Sarah found herself picking fights about small issues, magnifying minor incompatibilities into major problems. Eventually, she ended the relationship, telling David that they simply weren't compatible long-term. David was confused and hurt, especially since things had seemed so good between them. He tried to understand what had changed, but Sarah couldn't explain it in a way that made sense even to herself. All she knew was that the relationship had started feeling overwhelming, like she was losing herself, like she needed space to breathe. After the breakup, Sarah felt both relief and a deep sadness she couldn't quite name. The relief made sense. The pressure was gone, she had her freedom back. She could focus on her career and friends without the complications of a serious relationship. But the sadness felt more complicated, like she had lost something valuable that she might never find again. What Sarah didn't understand was that her fear response had hijacked a potentially beautiful relationship. The cognitive bias, called the fundamental attribution error, had convinced her that her discomfort was about David's characteristics rather than her own attachment patterns. When she felt anxious about meeting his family, she attributed that anxiety to the relationship being wrong rather than recognizing it as her avoidant attachment being triggered by increasing intimacy. This is where the story reveals its deeper truth. Sarah's pattern wasn't really about the specific people she dated or their individual flaws. It was about the moment when relationships moved from casual to significant, from independent to interdependent, from safe to vulnerable. Every time a relationship reached that threshold, Sarah's protective mechanisms would activate, scanning for reasons to retreat before she could be hurt or disappointed. The tragic irony was that her protection strategy was creating the very abandonment she was trying to avoid. But Sarah's story doesn't end there, because awareness changes everything. Several months after the breakup with David, Sarah started noticing the pattern in her dating history. She began to see how she consistently found reasons to end relationships right when they became more serious. This recognition was both painful and liberating. Painful because it meant acknowledging that she had probably sabotaged some genuinely good connections, but liberating because patterns can be changed once they're understood. The first step in transforming avoidant patterns is recognizing that the fear response isn't actually about the present relationship. It's about old wounds being triggered by new intimacy. When that familiar anxiety arises, when the urge to create distance becomes overwhelming, that's not necessarily a sign that the relationship is wrong. It might be a sign that the relationship is becoming real enough to trigger protective mechanisms that developed long ago. Understanding this distinction requires developing what psychologists call metacognition, the ability to think about thinking. Instead of automatically assuming that relationship anxiety means the relationship is problematic, learn to pause and ask different questions. Is this anxiety about legitimate concerns with this specific person, or is it about the general vulnerability that comes with deeper connection? Are the flaws being noticed in the partner actually relationship-ending problems, or are they being magnified by a nervous system that's looking for reasons to retreat? This process requires tremendous self-compassion because avoidant patterns developed for good reasons. That little child who learned to be self-reliant was adapting brilliantly to their environment. The protective mechanisms that feel so restrictive now were once necessary survival strategies. Healing doesn't mean judging those patterns harshly, but rather appreciating them while recognizing that they may no longer serve adult relationships. The next crucial step involves learning to tolerate the discomfort of vulnerability without immediately creating distance. This doesn't mean ignoring genuine red flags or staying in unhealthy relationships. It means developing the capacity to sit with the anxiety that naturally arises when relationships deepen, rather than letting that anxiety drive automatic retreat responses. Think of it like building physical strength. Emotional tolerance grows gradually through practice and repetition. One practical approach involves what therapists call leaning into the discomfort in small, manageable ways. When the urge to cancel plans or avoid deeper conversations arises, try staying present for just a few minutes longer than feels completely comfortable. When a partner expresses deeper feelings or wants to discuss the future, resist the immediate impulse to change the subject or create conflict. These small acts of courage gradually expand the capacity for intimacy without overwhelming the nervous system. Communication becomes essential during this process, though it requires vulnerability that feels counterintuitive to avoidant patterns. Consider sharing with trusted partners that intimacy sometimes triggers anxiety, not because of anything they've done, but because of old patterns that are being worked through. This kind of transparency can actually strengthen relationships by helping partners understand withdrawal as a trauma response rather than rejection of them personally. It's also important to challenge the cognitive biases that reinforce avoidant patterns. Confirmation bias leads to noticing every potential problem while ignoring signs of safety and love. Practice deliberately looking for evidence that relationships can be sources of joy and security. Keep a list of positive relationship moments to balance the tendency to focus on concerns and incompatibilities. When conflicts arise, resist the urge to see them as proof that the relationship is doomed, and instead view them as normal challenges that healthy couples navigate together. The negativity bias makes relationship problems feel more significant than they actually are. Combat this by practicing perspective taking. When something bothers you about a partner, ask whether this issue would matter in 5 years, whether it's something that could be addressed through communication, or whether it's being magnified by anxiety about vulnerability. Most relationship concerns fall somewhere on a spectrum rather than being absolute deal breakers. Address the availability heuristic by consciously exposing yourself to examples of healthy, lasting relationships. Avoidants often unconsciously seek out stories and examples that confirm their belief that relationships inevitably end in disappointment. Instead, deliberately seek out examples of couples who have navigated challenges successfully, who have grown closer through difficulties, who have maintained both individual identity and deep connection. Building secure attachment patterns also requires developing what psychologists call earned security, the ability to create the emotional safety that may not have been available in childhood. This involves learning to provide internal comfort and reassurance during moments of relationship anxiety, rather than looking to the partner for constant reassurance or automatically assuming the worst. Practice self-soothing techniques that calm the nervous system when intimacy triggers feel overwhelming. This might involve deep breathing, physical exercise, meditation, or simply reminding yourself that feeling vulnerable doesn't mean you're in actual danger. The goal isn't to eliminate anxiety about relationships, but to prevent that anxiety from automatically driving protective behaviors that damage connection. Another powerful strategy involves gradually expanding your support network beyond romantic relationships. Avoidants often put enormous pressure on romantic partners to meet all their emotional needs while simultaneously fearing that dependency. Building connections with friends, family members, mentors, or therapists creates a broader foundation of support that makes romantic relationships feel less threatening and overwhelming. Consider the character Emily Cooper from Emily in Paris, who, despite her romantic complications, maintains strong friendships and professional relationships that provide stability and support. This broader network means that romantic relationships don't carry the impossible burden of meeting every emotional need while also being completely safe and predictable. Remember that healing avoidant attachment is not about becoming a different person or abandoning the positive aspects of independence and self-reliance. The goal is developing flexibility, the ability to move fluidly between autonomy and connection depending on what the situation requires. Healthy relationships actually support individual growth and independence, while also providing emotional intimacy and support. The journey also involves grieving the relationships that were lost to avoidant patterns while celebrating the wisdom gained through that experience. Every relationship that ended due to self-protection provided valuable information about these patterns and brought you closer to the awareness needed for change. This perspective transforms past failures into stepping stones toward healthier connection. Finally, be patient with the process of change. Attachment patterns developed over years or decades don't transform overnight. There will be setbacks, moments when old patterns re-emerge, times when the urge to run feels overwhelming despite intellectual understanding. These moments aren't failures, they're normal parts of the healing process that provide opportunities to practice new responses. The hidden fear that keeps avoidance running from love, the terror of depending on someone who might leave, disappoint, or overwhelm, doesn't have to control your relationships forever. Understanding this fear is the first step toward freedom. Recognizing how cognitive biases reinforce protective patterns gives you the power to challenge those automatic responses. Developing new skills for managing vulnerability expands your capacity for the kind of deep, lasting connection that every human heart craves. The most beautiful relationships are built not on the absence of fear, but on the courage to love despite that fear. When you understand your avoidant patterns, you can begin to see them as old friends who were trying to protect you, thank them for their service, and gently choose a different path forward. The love you've been running from, the messy, vulnerable, imperfect, real kind of love, is exactly the love that can heal those old wounds and create the connection you've always longed for. Your attachment style isn't your destiny. It's simply information about how you learn to navigate relationships based on your early experiences. With awareness, compassion, and practice, you can develop the security that allows both independence and intimacy to coexist beautifully. The person who has been running from love can become the person who runs toward it, not recklessly, but with the wisdom to create relationships that honor both your need for autonomy and your deep desire for genuine connection. Take that first small step toward vulnerability today. Notice when the urge to retreat arises, and instead of automatically following it, pause and ask what your heart really wants. The answer might surprise you, and it might just change everything about how love shows up in your life.
Thank you for watching. If you want to learn how to better understand avoidance, relationships, and psychological biases, then subscribe to our channel, because you deserve beautiful relationships.